12:47 in the afternoon, March 14th, 1944, Rapido River Valley, Italy. Corporal James "Jimmy" Keller lies on the cold stone floor of a shattered farmhouse, cheek welded to the stock of a Springfield M1903. 480 yards away, a German observation bunker stares back at him like a concrete eye that never blinks. For 3 weeks, that bunker has been a death sentence. An unseen observer inside calls down artillery with brutal precision. Every attempt to silence him has failed. 3 Allied snipers are already dead. 17 infantrymen lie in churned mud and craters because every time the Americans move, shells arrive within 90 seconds. On paper, the bunker is untouchable. Reinforced concrete 3 feet thick. A narrow firing slit angled away from any direct line of fire. The spotter stands deep in the shadows, far enough back that no conventional rifle shot can reach him. And yet Keller is about to try something. With no manual mentions. He is not aiming at firing slit. He is aiming at a strip of darkness 3 inches high, 18 inches above it, where a steel roof beam meets the bunker's wall. His plan is simple and insane at the same time. Send 1 bullet through that gap, bank it off the angle of the I-beam, and drop it down into the bunker like a pool shot. If it works, a single unseen man dies, and an entire stretch of valley might finally breathe. If it fails, Keller will have wasted his one chance, and men will keep dying under shells he might have stopped. What nobody in that farmhouse knows yet is that this one trigger pull will start a quiet revolution in sniper warfare, whispered from foxhole to foxhole, copied across armies, and almost completely forgotten, except by the families of the men who lived because one corporal from Boston thought in angles instead of straight lines. Long before Keller ever crawled behind a sniper rifle, he was already dangerous with something far simpler, a pool cue in a smoky Charlestown hall. He grew up in a 3-room tenement that smelled like boiled cabbage, old motor oil, and tired hope. His father worked 16-hour shifts at the Navy Yard, loading munitions for pay that barely kept the lights on. So, Jimmy spent his childhood inside Murphy's pool hall on Main Street, not because he was chasing trouble, but because that was where his mind came alive. Other kids saw a cue ball and a pocket. Jimmy saw every rebound, every possible path, every angle the ball could take between here and there. Frank Murphy, the owner, used to shake his head and say, "Kid, you think in ricochets. Most folks see straight lines. You see the whole table." By 12 years old, Jimmy was beating grown men for quarters. By 16, when his father's back finally gave out, he left school without hesitation and took over the old man's shift at the yard. The cranes became his new pool table for rigging loads, reading stress angles, calculating how steel would swing under weight. He didn't know it, but he was training the brain of a world-class marksman. Then Pearl Harbor happened. Keller enlisted the next morning. The recruiter saw a crane operator on the form and shipped him to Fort Benning for infantry training. On the rifle range, everything changed. His accuracy stunned instructors, but what actually disturbed them was how he shot. While other recruits fired from the standard positions, Keller looked for odd angles, shooting under barriers, around obstacles, using cover the way he once used pool rails. "Kid shoots like he's playing geometry instead of war," a sergeant wrote in his file. They made him sniper. North Africa, Sicily, up the Italian mainland with the 36th Infantry Division. 19 confirmed kills. Solid work. Nothing extraordinary. He followed doctrine: elevation, range, wind, and squeeze. The Germans died. The war moved forward. But when the division reached the Gustav line, when the mountains turned into prisons of concrete and artillery, Keller's straight-line training met a problem built to defeat straight-line mines. And this time, the angles he'd learned in a Boston pool hall were about to matter more than anyone could imagine. The Germans didn't just build bunkers at Casino. They built traps, mathematical puzzles of concrete and steel designed to survive artillery, repel infantry, and outthink every Allied marksman who dared challenge them. Strong Point 7 was one of those puzzles. It sat 480 yards across the Rapido Valley, carved into the mountainside with the cold precision of an engineer who assumed correctly that most men think in straight lines. The firing slit was angled away from every likely sniper position. The walls were 3 feet thick. The observer stood deep inside the shadows, invisible, untouchable, and deadly. Every time American troops tried to advance, the same thing happened, a flash from that bunker, a radio call in German, and within 90 seconds shells whistled down with surgical accuracy. 8 Americans killed per day, every day. 3 men tried to kill the observer. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, 23 years old from Sacramento, engaged to a nurse named Dorothy. He tried at dawn, trusting a narrow moment of morning light to silhouette the German. He fired one perfect shot, and an enemy sniper, already watching a muzzle flash, sent a bullet through his throat 8 seconds later. Sergeant William Morrison, 31, from Tulsa, a husband, my father. Morrison tried suppressive fire, 17 rounds in 40 seconds, hoping to force the German back. 3 bullets were made inside, not one hit the observer. A mortar answered. Morrison and 2 of his men died before anyone could pull them from the crater. Private First Class Eddie Donovan, 20 years old from Brooklyn, a boxer, golden gloves. He didn't try firing slit. He tried to run through, smoke and get close enough to toss a grenade. The German machine gun tore the smoke apart, and him with it. He bled out in a crater 15 yards from the bunker. Keller watched Morrison die. They had shared a foxhole the night before, talking about home, about Morrison's daughter Sarah on a tire swing, about fishing trips he'd take her on when the war was over. The next morning, Keller helped bury him in a mass grave with 17 other men. After that burial, Strong Point 7 still stood, still watching, still killing. Every briefing ended the same way. No solution identified. But Keller didn't accept that. For 6 days, he watched the bunker like a scientist studying a dangerous machine. He drew sketches on cigarette packs. He borrowed a carpenter's protractor. He tracked shadows, light angles, and structural joints. And one night, while looking at those rough diagrams lit by a single match, he realized the truth. Everyone else was thinking forward. The Germans had built a fortress to defeat forward-thinking men. But Keller wasn't a straight-line thinker. He was a pool hustler from Boston. And he'd just found a flaw in the bunker about the tiniest, most improbable weakness imaginable. A 3-inch structural gap the engineers never meant to leave exposed. Asking to take the shot wasn't bravery. It was defiance of doctrine, of probability, of the quiet fatalism that had settled over the line after 3 dead snipers. When Keller approached Captain Hayes that morning, he wasn't reckless. He was desperate in a way only a man who has buried friends can be. "Sir, I need permission to attempt Strong Point 7. Hayes didn't even look up at first. 3 snipers have tried, all dead. "They tried direct fire, sir," Keller said. "I'm proposing indirect. Indirect fire is artillery's job." "Not artillery, sir. Indirect rifle fire. Through the beam gap. Hayes finally looked at him and really looked at him. What? Keller unfolded his sketches, crude lines on cigarette paper, angles scribbled with a borrowed carpenter's tool, a diagram of a bunker roof supported by beams, a 3-inch void where steel met concrete. If I position at bearing 247, elevation advantage 32 feet, he said quietly, I can send a round through that gap. It'll hit the inner angle of the I-beam and deflect it down into the firing slit. Roughly 40 degrees. You want to bank a bullet, Hayes said, like a pool shot. Yes, sir. That's insane. It's geometry. For a moment the only sound was Hayes's breathing. Then, you get one shot, Corporal. Miss, and you go back to rifles. If you get killed, I'll tell your mother you died trying something that shouldn't work. Keller nodded. Understood, sir. The farmhouse he chose was ruined with just enough walls left on the second floor to give a cover and a field of view. 480 yards, perfect distance, close to the numbers he'd run half the night. The smell hit him as soon as he settled in burned aviation fuel from a wrecked truck nearby, mixed with the sweet rot of bodies lying too long in the sun. The stone under his ribs was cold. His cut thumb kept catching on the stock. Sweat slid down his nose even though the air was cool. Through the scope, the bunker filled his vision. The firing slit, a shadowed rectangle. Above it, the faint, almost invisible beam gap. 3 inches, maybe less. Thread the needle, he told himself. Nothing more. Then he noticed a new problem. The I-beam wasn't perfectly installed with a slight upward tilt on the left side. Maybe 2 degrees. A tiny imperfection, but enough to bend the deflection angle. So, he recalculated the fly. Move point of aim 6 inches to the right. Trust the beam to kick the round back left and down. He couldn't see the German. I couldn't confirm the position. I didn't know if math worked. Everything was theoretical. And yet here he was, gambling lives on geometry, scribbled on cigarette foil. He exhaled. At the bottom of the breath before the next heartbeat, he squeezed the trigger. Springfield cracked. The recoil pushed into his shoulder. He saw a split-second vapor trail, a silver ghost streaking toward the beam gap. Then it vanished in the shadow, and the silence returned. Sniper doctrine demanded stillness after firing. 60 seconds. No movement, no corrections, just wait. 20 seconds, nothing. 30 seconds, wind rustled dry grass. 40 seconds, a bird landed on the roof, pecked, and flew away. At 47 seconds, everything changed. The bunker's rear door opened. One German rushed out, not sprinting but moving with sharp purpose. He disappeared into the front access. Another ran after him. Then another. Voices rose, frantic and confused. One man stumbled backward out of the slit entrance and waved wildly toward the rear like he'd seen a ghost inside. Keller didn't breathe. Strong .7 had gone dark. He stayed in position for 8 more minutes, watching them evacuate the entire bunker. No replacement went in. Not one soldier wanted to stand where their observer had just been killed by a bullet no one could explain. 20 minutes later, Captain Hayes climbed the farmhouse stairs. Did you take that shot? Yes, sir. The Germans abandoned 7. Patrol confirms that the observer is dead. Single gunshot wound. Downward trajectory. Entry upper chest. Exit lower abdomen. Hayes lit a cigarette, hands still shaking. Exactly as you described. Keller didn't speak. Corporal, what you just did violates every line of doctrine. If I report this, Command will order every sniper in Italy to try these trick shots. 99% will die trying." He paused, exhaled smoke. "But if someone asks how you did it, you tell them, quietly, off the record. We need this capability, but we can't make it official." Keller nodded. As Hayes walked away, he added softly, "For what it's worth, you just saved lives, probably dozens, maybe more. Thank you." Keller sat alone in the rubble after he left, hands finally trembling. The shot worked. The bunker was silent. But the men he'd lost, Morrison, Chen, Donovan, were still gone. And yet maybe, just maybe, the next bunker wouldn't cost 3 more. Word of the impossible shot didn't move the chain of command. It moved sideways, through foxholes, through whispered questions, through men desperate for anything that worked. That same night, a corporal from Baker Company asked Keller how he'd cracked Strong Point 7. Keller kept it simple. "There's a 3-inch gap where the roof beam meets the wall. Hit that, the round drops inside." The corporal stared. "You banked a bullet?" "It's an angel," Keller said. "Same as a pool shot." The next morning, 4 snipers knew the method. By the afternoon, it's 7. Nobody called it a deflection theory. They called it the grape shot. 2 days later, Sergeant Thomas Riley tried it on Strong Point 12 bunker, identical to 7. 1 shot, 1 deflection, 1 dead observer. The position went silent, and Baker Company advanced without taking a single round of directed artillery fire. That's when the Germans noticed. Reports described American snipers neutralizing protected observers with rifle shots coming from impossible angles. Engineers found bullets buried in I-beams, but fixing the flaw was impossible, as the gaps were structural. Without them, the roof collapsed. German commanders reacted by pulling observers farther back from firing slits. It made them safer, but half-blind. Artillery calls slowed. Accuracy has dropped. Across the Rapido sector, American casualty rates fell sharply. Still, headquarters credited the improvement to better training. Keller's name never appeared. By May, the trick reached the British 8th Army. After Day, it spread to Normandy. No paperwork, no doctrine. Just a soldier-to-soldier idea whispered between men who wanted to live. Historians estimate the technique helped neutralize 127 fortified posts from March 1944 through the end of the war. About 3 lives saved per bunker. Roughly 380 men lived because of a geometry lesson no one officially acknowledged. Keller went home after the war, married, raised kids. "I worked on cranes, played pool at the VFW. He died in 1998. His obituary never mentioned Italy, Strong Point 7, or the technique that changed sniper warfare. 60 years later, historian Dr. Patricia Williamson traced the first gap shot back to 1 corporal in the 36th Infantry Division. 1 man, 1 moment, 1 bullet through 3 inches of shadow. Modern snipers still learn the method. They just don't know the name of the man who invented it. War rarely remembers the men who rewrite its rules. Not the corporals in cold farmhouses, not the riggers' sons from Boston, not the pool hall for kids who look at a concrete bunker and see a geometry problem. The official histories talk about divisions, armies, breakthroughs, and big arrows on big maps. But the real turning points often start with a single, exhausted soldier who refuses to accept that the doctrine is complete. Keller never bragged about the shot, never told his children what he figured out on March 14, 1944. The army never pinned a medal to his chest. And when he died, his headstone said only, name, rank, dates of service, grey marble, short grass, a small American flag on Memorial Day. But somewhere inside every modern sniper school, instructors still teach young soldiers to search for structural gaps, to calculate deflection angles, to see the hidden paths. Between steel and concrete, they teach Keller's trick without ever speaking his name, and maybe that's fitting, because sometimes the greatest legacy a soldier leaves isn't carved into medals, but in the lives quietly saved by a technique no one was supposed to try. Before you go, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And did anyone in your family ever serve under rules written by people who weren't there?